Exactly, and I think even more gratifying in some ways than doing the workshop, although I think that over time I've been able to develop that and some of them have been very effective, is sitting down with individual faculty, and it's the same kind of situation. They are asking for assistance. They want to sit down and talk to somebody and just have a conversation and bounce ideas off of you, and you make suggestions back and forth. So it's much more interactive, it's much more focused on a particular course, a particular problem, a particular set of pedagogical issues that might be relevant to that discipline. And so I've actually found that to be the most rewarding. It's not efficient, that is, it's one-on-one, so it's not one-to-many, but it probably is ultimately, in terms of the return on time, you know, what's going to happen as a result of that workshop.
On that.
Yeah.
Course design.
Precisely. And so I think a lot of the teaching and learning centers here should take a lot of the materials they have, that is the PowerPoint slides, if they're videotaping the workshops, put them up on their web pages, and again, so when people are ready and need them, they simply go to that. And that's sort of a just-in-time way to access information and resources to assist the faculty developing gen ed proposals, courses. It's hard to select any one or two being more significant than others because you know, we value all of them and they all have an impact. I think for the Hong Kong institutions there are a couple that are particularly important. One would be writing intensive courses, and I think that's important for purposes of simply developing and enhancing the language abilities of students. So I think those kinds of courses would be of particular value to Hong Kong. I think the other high impact practice is undergraduate research, where students have the opportunity to work on a research project with the faculty. And I think one of the reasons why that is particularly useful for Hong Kong is because it allows for an entirely different kind of pedagogical model, a different kind of interaction with the student. The student is more active, it's more discovery based, there's more creativity, there's certainly much more interaction between the faculty and the student. A relationship develops out of that, which we know is valuable. So the undergraduate research experience, it's labor intensive. Not all students can necessarily engage in that kind of activity. But of all the activities, I think that encompasses probably as many of the positive teaching and learning experiences that one could imagine. The other I would maybe emphasize, simply in relationship to the gen ed program, are learning communities, and typically what we put in learning communities. So in the United States, when we think of learning communities, we often think of them in the context of first-year experience. And because the gen ed initiative starts in 2012, there will be a group of students coming in that cohort. They're a year younger. It's their first year. They would benefit greatly, I think, from having a kind of first-year experience, first-year programming that would emphasize the kinds of skills, capacities, and competencies that you expect of students. And so to develop a first-year seminar or the kind of course that City University has talked about doing, one where you socialize students into the academic culture of the university. I think that's going to become even more critical. I think it's already critical now, and I think people have identified that as an issue in Hong Kong, but with the gen ed reform, I think it will be even more critical. And there isn't agreement necessarily on what the general education curriculum should be either in the United States, you know, so that's contested curriculum. But I think if you ask most faculty members, what they'll say is the students aren't necessarily prepared for college work or prepared for the demands we make, or we have expectations that they have a certain role as a student, all of these things. Now the faculty will all admit that those are critical factors. They're not always willing to then say we should have in the curriculum a course devoted to this sort of socialization. That becomes contested because I think people wonder, you know, where does it fit, how academically rigorous is it, but it's a part of the development of the student. So if you think of the development of the student as more than simply the academic, but the academic, the social, you involve not just academic affairs, but student affairs, then there's a good case to be made for that kind of course to prepare the students. And again, I think it'll be even more critical for the group of students coming in 2012. Now the students coming in 2012 will have, at least half of them will have experienced a different kind of secondary curriculum. The question is, will that matter? What orientation will they come with that will be different than the students that didn't go through that secondary curriculum? I think most of the universities have done a good job of developing a framework for general education, outcomes. I think outcomes-based teaching and learning has been a good model for that purpose. So they have a structure. Most of them have the beginnings, if not close to the finish, of a curriculum in terms of the courses and the categories and the distribution areas. But over the next year, I think the pressure will mount about how they are going to organize and manage the experience of this new cohort that's coming in, 1 year younger, and also it's a double cohort. So I think putting into place a kind of infrastructure that supports this. So I would say a first-year experience kind of infrastructure that communicates to students not only what it is to be a student, but also the value and importance of general education. Because now the students are going to see this as a new curriculum that they have to complete. Are they going to understand it? Are they going to appreciate it? Are they going to engage in it? Or is it going to be viewed, often as it is in the United States, as something that is an obstacle on the way out, rather than something that actually enhances the experience throughout? Yes.
On the way in and
right,
out, yeah.
right. So I think they do need to think about first-year experience programming, and I think related to that is academic advising. Most academic advising at the Hong Kong universities has been concentrated, again, within the academic program that the students enter. Now we're talking about a more generic kind of experience for the students, generic in terms of general education, but also generic in terms of giving students some opportunities at some of the universities to think about alternative programs of study from what they might have thought when they were coming in, or they might not even have committed themselves when they were coming in. So it's really important that the students have the kind of quality academic advising that allows them to make informed choices.